Hi, everybody. I'm Candid, Frank Stanisci of CFL Talk. Welcome to the Spanglish World Network on Zingo TV, channel 250. Please remember to download the Zingo TV app at the respective app stores for just kidding, iOS and Android devices. While you download the app, make sure you rate and leave a comment. Both apps are absolutely free. Zingo TV is available on Google, Chromecast, Amazon Fire TV sticks, Roku sticks, and also on all smart TVs 2016 forward. Now on CFL Talk, joining me is David Morassutti.
I can't do that. But
You can't do that?
I can't do that. But happy to be here, Frank. Thank you for that.
I love voices. I love voices. You weren't. Was it with you? No, it was somebody else. I was going. I froze, right? So earlier today we did the other show with Aaron. It's maybe I was so animated. Maybe it's a good thing my camera was frozen. But anyway, so how are you doing?
I'm not doing too bad. The weather was a bit nicer today. Snow's starting to melt, and we're warming up to it. The CFL free agency talk. Holy.
Yeah, and it's moving along. We'll get to that. More important things. Only let's see. Today's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. 6 more sleeps till the Super Bowl.
Oh, yeah. That's it's gonna be a fun one. You know what? It's interesting because people are like, NFL colluding to get another host team into the Super Bowl. I'm like, I predicted the Rams to be in the Super Bowl. It's just
I
I
had
didn't
I
pick
had,
the
I had
Bengals to be the one to go up against them.
I had them in Kansas City, so
Came close.
I'm wearing red and mourning. No, just kidding. Um, yeah, no, it was it's going to be an interesting game. We could be seeing another one of those Super Bowls won by a quarterback. Everybody goes, he doesn't deserve to win a Super Bowl, or the beginning of an era.
Hmm. Yeah, no, I would. Yeah, I mean, and it's funny because we couldn't get a definitive answer either.
No, absolutely not. So I'm going with the Ohio. I'm going with
You're
Burrow.
going with
Sorry.
we're going with Joey B.
Yeah, I'm going with Joey B.
You know what? It's funny because I'm still leaning the Rams as a team.
Home team.
But if you're comparing quarterbacks, I think even though Joe Burrow is younger than Matthew Stafford, is less experienced. I don't know if anybody watched that national championship game with Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase with LSU. I look at that and I say, don't be easy to go up and look at what he did against the Chiefs. This is someone that when the spotlight's on him, he ain't gonna make it easy on you.
He's a guy, that's you know, this Super Bowl's in the way of him being holding a record no one else can claim, at least for now.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, and I think if he were to win, like I think he'd be the first quarterback or one of
Yep.
the few quarterbacks to go. I call it the triple crown.
Yeah,
And
the first to do that. Super Bowl,
he's the
college
first. Okay.
championship, and the big trophy
And
that they all
it's
go for.
and I actually I meant to research this before the show, but I want to know how many quarterbacks that went first overall have won
Ah,
a Super Bowl.
well, that's something that's interesting because I bet you there aren't any. No, just kidding. Um, but I don't know. Because
That's
not
always
only until recently, they didn't really draft quarterbacks first overall.
no, because you think about it, like teams teams value that position so much, but you also look at the other areas of what makes a team successful, and you know
The
it's
best player in the draft. Who's the best player in the draft? But
yeah.
what you're alluding to is The
That's
quarterback's the most important player in the draft now, today, by everyone's judgment.
hmm yeah. I mean, but look, I mean, we just saw Tom Brady picked in no in the
Mm,
deep hole of the NFL draft, going to have one of the best NFL careers you'll ever see. To then, how many first overall picks quarterbacks have struggled, right? So actually, there is a this is a funny one. This is the second time that two first overall picks are going up against each other in the Super Bowl.
uh-huh.
The last time, Peyton Manning versus Cam Newton. So we know Peyton Manning has won Super Bowls. So that I think like he was one of them. Like there's not many like recently. I think Eli Manning was first overall if I'm not mistaken. Like it's not there's not a whole lot of them. It's so weird because almost like first overall pick is supposed to change the fortunes of your franchise.
Absolutely, and it
It's,
does.
I think in Cincinnati, you can definitely say yes. Joe Burrow, and pair him with Jamar Chase. I think that's really where teams go wrong, right? It's you draft that quarterback first overall, okay, but what's the supporting cast like? And I think this is where I'm leaning towards the Rams more because I think Matthew Stafford has a better supporting cast than Joe Burrow.
For now. Yeah, for
Yeah.
now. Absolutely. But what I'll say is this is who else did Burrow beat in the playoffs this year? What other quarterbacks did he beat?
Well, if you're talking about Ryan Tannehill, as one person put it,
Yeah.
like that was an impressive one too. But I still like if you're gonna compare, I don't think the Titans were a true number one seed. Like I would have actually have picked like the Bengals over Tennessee. That's not an upset in my opinion because I look at Tennessee was fell flat for a good part of the season.
And
And
they went flat again in their playoff game.
yeah, because I just don't think their offense was good enough. They have weapons. Derrick Henry, arguably, he is the best running back in the NFL. AJ Brown, fantastic wide receiver. But other than that, Titans didn't have much. I would take what Joe Burrow has.
And what Joe Burrow is.
Yeah,
Just so we don't spend the whole show on the Super Bowl, the bottom line is that Joe Burrow has proven to be able to win when he's not supposed to, and kind of surprise. And I think that's what's going to happen in this Super Bowl. Even though he's done enough damage till now, he's had so much success. No one should be surprised. So I like him, and I think the NFL has really, especially the AFC, they've hit into a real gold mine of quarterbacks. It's something I wish, and I'll make a segue now. Something I wish for the Canadian Football League. It's the one thing that we're not getting in the Canadian Football League, and that is some young quarterbacks that are dislodging. I believe one of the reasons why uh, I think Brady finally said, you know what, he looked at the landscape and the landscape of all these great young quarterbacks, and he I think saw that his team would have to do a little bit of retooling because they can't afford the players they have to keep them. And that game that he lost, he did everything he could to help Tampa Bay win. His receivers were not that good. The stickum wasn't sticking. And I think he knows the beauty of Brady. He knows what it takes to win, and he knows the price he's willing to pay. And he made that decision. And but Burrow is a great way. It's just for me. It's going to be just imagine this. You're a writer. The story,
it's the
the year
story.
Brady leaves is the first year for Burrow. I just see a story being written already in that context, in that sole context.
Well, and look, you were starting to see that with Patrick Mahomes, and
Mhm.
everyone's pretty much put Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes as like the next Brady, Peyton Manning rivalry. Just two guys that will likely be going head to head in a lot of playoff games. Joe Burrow,
He's making it more interesting.
yeah, like yeah, especially the AFC for sure. The NFC, it's more of the older guard. You have like the Aaron Rodgers, Matthew Stafford, like the quarterback. Yeah, I would say the quarterback competition in the NFC isn't like what it is in the
They
AFC.
just don't have the young, apparent up and coming quarterbacks. I mean, there could be 3 quarterbacks in the NFC right now that we're not seeing doing it, right? That all of a sudden, boom, they'll flower, right? Because that the position at quarterback is so fundamental, um, you know, with a team. They grab all the attention. Offense does. Defenses do what they need to do. They are um, they are the players that are most satisfied with getting at the quarterback. That's where the stars are on the defense, the guys that get the quarterback. So, it's going to be a fun Super Bowl. I know I'm going to enjoy it because I never get enough of football. For those that think that it's CFL or nothing, I'm sorry, I don't think that way. I think football is football. I prefer the Canadian Football League if both are on. Well, I don't really watch the NFL while the Canadian Football League's going because I want to make sure I watch all the CFL games. So you were right. We took a little bit of detour into the Super Bowl. Free agency is very interesting. I want to start with this subject. How well do you like what Sean Burke is doing in Ottawa, and how, in my mind, quickly he is doing it?
Well, and this is the thing, right? Right now, if we're gonna say which team is winning free agency, it has to be the Ottawa Red Blacks based on all the guys they were bringing in.
The quality, too.
Quality too, right? And it's not just the Jeremiah Mazzoli. What do they do with Mazzoli? They bring in someone he knows very well in Ackland. Then they bring back
Auckland.
Powell, who was great for them when they were. I mean, I'm a little bullish on Powell. Just I don't know. He's getting up there. He hasn't been the same running back, but maybe this rejuvenates him. But it's also you know he's bringing in who he knows, right? Sean Burke is picking at the guys he knows.
Oh, and he knows the guys. He
Yeah.
knows them well. Just to slide this in about Ackland. Uh, Ottawa getting Ackland surprises me because I would have thought that Brandon Banks was set free because Hamilton had, you know, Ackland. And now that Ackland's gone, I'm just wondering whether Hamilton will circle back to Brandon Banks.
Well, I think Brandon Banks is also maybe looking to see how the dust settles with other players, right? The
Mhm.
wide receiver class right now isn't the best in terms of how what's really out there. Brandon Banks might be one of the better players available, so he wants to make sure he's maximizing, his negotiating position.
And he's laid out for Hamilton Tiger Cat fans. He's let them know how much he loves them. He thinks he's wonderful, and he would have come back to Hamilton at a home team discount. So if he goes somewhere else, he's saying Hamilton didn't want him. If he's saying that and nobody wants to disagree with him, or Hamilton doesn't say it, doesn't any pushback from that statement, nobody's going to resent him leaving.
No, and I don't think anyone should resent him, right?
Not at all.
He gave them, what was it, 8 of his best years or so. He gave them his best years, right? He's not the same Brandon Banks when he first came into league and was dominating as one of the better, all around offensive players. So like if you're Hamilton, like you also, I said this after the Super Bowl, you kind of need to turn the leaf a little bit in terms of you got to bring in some newer players because you've went through another disappointing Grey Cup loss. You have to kind of change it.
But also, David, don't forget that the best years that Hamilton had were Brandon Banks' best years. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, definitely, right, and and Jeremiah Mazzoli was a part of that too. Like it comes to a point where as an organization, you need to really decide how many times can we run it back the same way and expect a different result, right? They're kind of doing with Dane Evans, but not particular, like not completely. They're adding in some different mixes on defense. Offense is still the one thing with Hamilton. I'm curious of where that's going in terms of they brought back Jackson. They're going to lose Banks. They're going to lose Ackland. They brought back Sean Thomas Erlington, so that running back committee stays the same. I think Sean Lemon's going to be there, and I think it looks like Jagarrett Davis is on his way out.
Yeah,
So,
he's gone. He's
like,
in Toronto.
yeah, like that. I mean, it's not confirmed, but it sounds like that's it. That's Toronto's made a good enough push to sign him. Dylan Wynn is still there. Like, I find this to be very interesting because I think Hamilton right now, if I'm a Tiger Cast fan, you're going to be confident in that team because of what they've done over the last few years. But if you see what Ottawa, Toronto, and Montreal have done, you can't help but be a little worried that things are going to get tougher there.
Absolutely. And as I said on our Candid Frank live show, um, Ottawa is going to make a claim to not just the playoffs, but they're going to make a claim to first with the way that they're going, and the question marks that exist on the rest of the other three teams. Vernon Adams, there's no question he's a great quarterback. Bethel Thompson, statistics pretty impeccable. Results, not so much. Over in Hamilton, they can get her done during the season. They can get it done during the playoffs, but they can't seem to get it done in the Grey Cup. And I'm just wondering how much of a contribution that Mazzoli made in a season in Hamilton, because it's more than just being on the field. Okay, the quarterback room is also an important function of a team and the quarterback. So and then again, though, Hamilton brings in Schultz. So he's a really good quarterback. We saw that with Montreal when Vernon Adams first went down, and then they went and got Harris. So they knew something that I don't know, but I got to tell you, David, it really is going to be a toss-up in the East. It's going to be very interesting. Not good enough a toss-up that they'll be threatening the crossover in the West.
Yeah.
Because I happen to think that Calgary, Saskatchewan, and Winnipeg are going to come back as stronger than they did last year. We'll see if Edmonton, and BC can do any improving, but I'm not very excited about what those two teams have done in the offseason so far.
Well, Edmonton is puzzling in that they go out, they bring back two guys who were retired in Bowman and Arsenault, and then they go out and blow a good portion of their budget on Kenny Lawler, like $300,000. Like when the Argos signed Darrell Walker,
Same thing.
3 years ago, was it 2018, 2019?
Yep.
That was a lot of money
It
that they
still
could have,
is.
right? It's still like
Yeah, you're right.
it's the formula doesn't make sense what Edmonton is doing. I know Ed Gainey is going there. That's a good pickup for them because I think he is one of the better defensive backs, but it's going to cost them in other places.
The league is doing what you and I have been talking about in the opposite direction. They're doing exactly what we're saying. Can I use this term? Doing things wrong. A lot of teams are the blender's out. All the teams, the blender's out. Get your program because you're going to need it. But hold on a second, the names in the program might not be right. it's moving that quick.
Oh, and that's the other thing too. It's fast paced, right? Tomorrow is when it officially opens, and that's when you're going to see a lot of these
And
contracts
it's open season.
become official. And I don't envy the people working at the CFL who have to keep track of all these transactions. It reminds me again that look, it's exciting that there's so much movement, but at the same time, because there's so much movement, it's really hard. You're just like, oh, he went there. Oh, he went there. Oh, I thought he was there. Like it gets to be a little overwhelming if you're, even a person who wants to follow the CFL, but doesn't want to follow it, 24/7 and have to keep, pretty much keep charts of who went where and where they're going and what, and, we don't know what they make although it's been reported what they make. So like it is a grind. It is a massive grind to follow any CFL free agency period.
Well, to follow the free agency and then to follow the team that you've been following for years if you're not really following free agency. A lot of people, I know for a fact, a lot of people follow every little move that their CFL team makes. But I also know a lot of people that don't, and they go there to cheer for teams. They have jerseys of players, and they're going to find out whether that jersey is relevant anymore. And if not, who should they gamble on as a relevant replacement for that jersey that they had? If you're an Argo fan, if Jagarrett Davis signs with the Argos, you say, "Oh, well, that's a good jersey to have because that guy's going to be a leader, right?" So, but again, it's all about change, and hopefully, it's been tough these past couple of years. These kinds of changes during COVID have been a major challenge. Hopefully, the season coming up will not be as coveted. It'll just be coming out of COVID. It'll mean regular training camp, regular exhibition games. They're going to need it. Some of the teams are going to need all that stuff because to get their chemistry going, to get their team matemanship going, the camaraderie that helps develop, the team concept is going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting.
And look, and you look at, and I'm gonna bring the NFL into here just because you look at the teams that are constantly there, and continuity remains, I think, the biggest reason why a lot of teams are where they are. Yeah, there's gonna be certain teams that will make a run, like the Rams with putting in a new quarterback, but the system, the continuity was there from the beginning. And I look at, I think really we talked about this with Hamilton and Winnipeg. There's a reason why they're always there. The formula hasn't changed. The Yes, there's players moving in and out, but there's a core. There has been a core for a good number of years that you can follow with that team, and there's almost like a lead that has been an established pedigree that every player that comes to that team has to follow and continue with. And I think if you're a CFL team, like, it's funny because when we had Danny on last week, Danny Austin, he was like, Calgary wasn't given 1 year contracts. They were trying to get 2 years. Sometimes that costs more, sometimes that costs less. But what it does is it at least establishes some sort of, this is not something we're trying to do for 1 year. We're trying to build something that can be somewhat sustainable.
Absolutely. And that's the issue really is that you want to sustain some kind of consistency that the players help give you when they're with the team for more than a season. And players, it's not just the fans getting to know the players, it's the players too. They get to know each other as well. There's just simply, I mean, everybody knows that a quarterback and a receiver, they really need to know each other. It helps when they've been together longer than a year. Each time, each season that comes by and they're together, it helps increase, basically how well they interact, how well the thrower throws to the catcher and how much the catcher understands how the thrower is going to throw. It's stupid basic stuff, but
I also
it's
think the
something.
offensive line it falls under that too, right?
Yeah, no,
Playing,
absolutely.
you know, the continuity of the offensive line and the quarterback is so crucial. You know, the quarterback may say block left. If the guy is not familiar with the terminology, he might not go left. Like it's one of those things where I think more so than ever, like the last few years have really showed me that, you look at a team's how offensive line, how many of them are new, how many of them are, how much change turnover has there been, and usually the teams that keep as much of it together, you're going to be interchanging parts. You're going to have, once in a while things are going to change there. But I look at with uh, you know, the Winnipegs and Hamiltons, and I think, other teams are starting to get there. I mean, there's teams that have to start from scratch, right? Ottawa is one of those teams that pretty much said to themselves, we kind of have to go from ground. We have to kind of scorch earth this, and it's. I think it also helps if you're looking at guys with experience. That's usually where a lot of teams, I think, do it right. I continue. It's funny because I was looking back at some articles I wrote from 2017 when the Argos brought in Jim Pop and Mark Trestman. A few days later, like it was like 3 or 4 days later, free agency started, and they had to they had only 3 4 days to put up a game plan. So what did they do? They went after quite a few veterans, and I think that's why they were so successful in that season because they had a veteran team. But now I think you're going to see teams go the opposite direction, build it youth through youth, and bring it and build them up a bit and have that continuity. It's easier to do with younger players than with veterans.
Free agency will help them to decide how they draft. Signing Canadians will help them decide how they handle the draft. Right now, there's no talk really about the draft and other than the players that are available. They're doing a lot of work to work on the draft, but right now the free agency thing is about the short-term free agency opportunity now ended, and like you said, the agreements will be confirmed once free agency is ready to go. The official free agency, not the window one, the one that is until the season starts, and then those players will be a part of the team, David. And it's funny how it's like a buffet, right? In the CFL, it's like no other league. There are all these different times, and okay, now you got to go to that table with the meat, and go to the table with the vegetables, the dessert, the ice cream, it's and they're all competing for the same people each time, right? So it's very competitive. The general managers, they have a lot of work to do, and their scouting staff and everybody on the team that is trying to figure out what they need. And what they need will change real quick. So right now, with to review for the fans who've joined, David Morassutti and I, we're halfway through the program. We're halftime. We've talked about the real winner so far has to be the Ottawa Redblacks, which should put pressure on the other three teams in the East, because those three teams now are not going to be fighting over first, second, and third. They're going to be fighting over a playoff spot too. And the West, we haven't seen BC and Edmonton do anything really as as team changing as Ottawa has done. Now, how much help is it, David, in free agency that'll be left, considering who's already gone? A lot of the plums are off the tree.
This is where the whole legal tampering period. I get why they're doing it because players and agents were doing it anyways, and teams are doing it anyways. But it does take away like some of that mystery of what's like. There's going to be a lot of things happening on free agency, but you look at the best players. Most of them have already been locked up, or we already know where they're heading. So I think teams are going to have to be very careful, because what happens is if you have a team that might have money left over, then either we're going to use it or we're not using like, and then players that are left over, and if they see that they can take advantage of a situation, especially if they are a player of that's desired, a player that is in command and can maybe spruce up his
His
maximize
resume.
return. Like that's what Kenny Lawler did, right? He had a few teams that wanted him.
Oh
Jeremiah
yeah.
Masoli did the same thing. He had two teams gunning for him. We were worried whether Jeremiah Masoli was going to get the money. Well, guess what? He found a way to do it.
Well,
But
we did also say that he was, him and Harris were the only two experienced quarterbacks that have won before and that were MVPs in their career. So, that kind of quarterback, I mean, the GM said it right. Sean Burke said, not often do players like Mazzoli come up available, of that quality.
no, and I'm a little surprised we haven't heard more on the Trevor Harris front for that reason. Like, I don't know if you saw what Greg Ellingson has said about him. Like, there might not be a more accurate quarterback in the CFL. Like, I'm a little surprised that Mazzoli went first for that reason because I thought the Red Blacks and Alex could have looked at Trevor Harris first and say this is someone that's really have done has done it and can really turn a team. Like, both those teams need a turnaround, and I thought Trevor Harris would have easily been a good candidate to get that done. But maybe, the age and how much he has left in tank, maybe that plays a factor. I don't know.
Well,
But
what he told us on the show, David, was that he was going to wait till the dust settled, and I assume by dust he means he wanted to wait for the legit free agency.
and you know what? I that sometimes can work because a team might be like, you know what? If you're willing to fit what we have to offer you, it might be a better situation.
Well, look at it this way. Look at it mathematically. If there were two quarterbacks available for, let's say, four teams, that's stretching it, maybe three in reality.
Mhm.
If there were two quarterbacks available for three teams, even as few as three teams, once that first quarterback goes off the market, now you're dealing with one quarterback and two teams, you know, fighting over him, if that's the case, if they both want him. And between now and then, we've seen some pretty strange goings on. I don't know. Is there a situation where we could see a quarterback get traded? I'm not sure we can, because I think we're seeing the early news tells us that a lot of the teams are making their commitment. We saw what Edmonton did with their quarterback.
Mhm.
We saw that in BC they don't have a starting quarterback. That's decided.
A
We
proven CFL starting quarterback. Yeah.
Yeah, and in Alberta, both quarterbacks, we know who they are, and I don't see either of them getting traded. Edmonton spent some money, readjusted a contract to basically give Arbuckle security that he was going to be there. What Winnipeg's not doing nothing. Then you got Toronto signed Bethel Thompson. Hamilton signed the guy that started in the Grey Cup for them, right? And then they brought in Matthew Schultz, a pretty good number two. I think one of the best number twos in the league. And, Montreal's circling back to Vernon Adams. Ottawa got Mazzoli. Trevor Harris is going out west if he's going anywhere.
Yeah. No, I think it's either he figures it out in Edmonton or BC decides we'll give Nathan Work a little bit of more time, because if you bring in Trevor Harris, you're not starting Nathan Work over Trevor Harris. Like, yeah, BC and Edmonton are really the only two
and
teams that.
and does BC do the opposite of what they did with Riley, where they basically, you know, they opened the bank for Riley, right? Do they now use a different plan of attack if they believe they're the only ones that Harris has to go to?
I think some teams will play hardball with Trevor Harris because Trevor Harris will say you need a starting quarterback, and they'll say we have a starting quarterback,
That's
and then
right. That's where they're all at,
and then
except for BC.
Trevor Harris is going to say, well, that's her starting quarterback isn't better than me, doesn't have the experience I bring. Trevor Harris has. There's only like two quarterbacks that have as much experience than Trevor Harris. That's Bo Levi Mitchell and Zach Caleros. Other than that, no other team or quarterback should feel that they have any edge over Trevor Harris. Like, I think highly of Trevor Harris. I know he hasn't had the win, hasn't won that Grey Cup. But there are a lot of a lot of these guys that have been signed that haven't won a Grey Cup either. So I think that's the biggest domino I'm looking for is the Trevor Harris one, because I think signing him could actually be a game changer for the team that brings him in.
Is it possible? And we saw strange activity last time where we saw quarterbacks change hands that we thought were locked in. Nichols was supposedly locked into Toronto, as was Arbuckle in Ottawa, and then they were traded. Is it possible there's a team out there that will trade the quarterback they have? BC signs Trevor Harris. Is there a questionable quarterback other than the guys that we mentioned? I don't think the only one in my mind that is questionable to any degree, and not much of a degree, not question, because Bethel Thompson has great numbers. He's a great leader. He's a good guy. The, does Toronto even want Harris? Is Harris the guy that they want? The people in charge in Toronto, is Harris the kind of guy they want? And I don't mean that in a personal sense. I mean in a way he plays quarterback sense. So, they're all set right now already, unless something happens, between now and training camp, David. BC's the only team that doesn't have a quarterback that, and I'll put it this way, that a team has not made a big investment in. Every other team has made a big investment in their because if you're spending more than 300 grand for your quarterback, you're making a big investment. It's a big part of your cap. 350, 400.
Yeah, like, and that's the thing, right? Is BC trying to change the tune on that of not wanting to spend the money and put it elsewhere? But I also think, like, yeah, I when I'll bring up the Bethel Thompson argument in that. Look, I think they want to give him that full out opportunity.
Is this one more chance for him? Do
I
they
I I, I
do they
have
go through another off season where they just didn't cut it?
I,
There were a couple of years there when he was there when the team let him down.
yeah. No,
So,
I think
last year was his first chance with a good team to see how far he could take the team.
I think they believe in him. I mean, I saw what Pinball Clemens said about him before they signed him, and I'm like, that led me to believe that they were going to bring him back and they're going to ride with him. But I think, yeah, I think if you're the Argos, you're this is kind of you're not going to do it all over again if it doesn't work out. I think like they're going to give him his legitimate shot, and then they'll have to wait and see how that works. And maybe Trevor Harris decides to wait until training camp, where teams may well, that might decide how teams go too, because injuries play a factor too. Trevor Harris he'll be. I think he can play this multiple ways. I think they can all benefit him if he does it right.
The dust settling. He said it. He knows. He's been through the grind. He knows how things can change between the end of free agency and the beginning of the season. He's been there, done that. So I think he has a good idea of what it's like. And then don't forget, if the CFL doesn't work out, there are other leagues this coming year that'll be starting up. There may be other opportunities. So, that's something that we as CFL fans and people who cover the CFL are more than aware of, that there is some competition out there. Um, but I guess when it comes to the teams, we talked about Ottawa at this point. To this point, they've been probably the most effective bringer of players to their roster, key players. What do you see? Is there a team right now at this phase that you see, David, that'll be making some moves that are more interested in depth moves, players to not necessarily the big guys, you know, the mid range players, the ones that are available now that who'll be dipping in a little more than anyone else. I'm gonna go with BC myself.
Yeah, I was thinking about that. Well, we know it's not Calgary because Job Hopnickle says he can only afford McDonald's right now, so we know it's not them. I think Montreal. I don't really know how much Montreal has. I know they just re-signed William Stanback to a contract extension.
Yes. Yes.
So they're an interesting team because I think I'm wondering if they have some money to spend there because they got rid of Schultz, they brought in Dominic Davis, they re-signed Vernon Adams. I'm wondering if there's more there. I think they want to see if they can really push it forward. And I think they need the depth because we know that that's a team that has some emerging players, but you lose.
Weineke.
Yeah, like Weineke was a big one. I'm curious to see, do they do anything on the defensive side of the ball. So I think
Mm.
offensively they're pretty solid there. I'm wondering if they try to do anything on defense to really give them a bit more of a chance.
The pass rush, you know, the really good teams have one. In the case of Winnipeg, they have two. But most teams have one and some none. Um, the pass rush is really important. I think the Argos watched what we watched, and that is that we watched Winnipeg's ends rush both quarterbacks in Hamilton into the ground.
Yeah, no, and I think even Montreal had a good pass rush this year. Like they had a very decent pass rush, so I think they had the formula there. I just think there's maybe the offensive line could have been better because
Mhm.
William Stanback didn't have his best games against Hamilton. Like that's a team you're trying to beat, and they kind of took away their best weapon. So maybe that's where they try to go. They try to fix that part, but yeah, no, I think Montreal. Very. I mean, you've always been high on them, Frank, and maybe I wasn't as
Yeah,
high.
I just and I just see that they seem to always run into a little bad luck. Like the Vernon Adams injury was bad luck.
Yes, the Vernon Adams injury was bad luck. I mean, they got Trevor Harris, so they didn't fully derail them.
No,
But
not at all.
no, I think that's a team that you can see that is doing things the right way. I mean, with Danny Manchocha taking over, and he, funny enough, was bringing in the Quebec players, and we're like, oh, is he just going to do what a
Yeah.
lot of Montreal teams try to do? But no, there was some method to the madness in many ways. Um, yeah, so I think if I think BC is a good choice because I think they still have moves to make. I think Montreal is another team that I think wants to make moves. Maybe they wait until the draft and see if they can capitalize on that again. But I think that's a team that I think isn't done yet.
Yeah, how many experienced non-upper echelon players can you use on your roster? I know BC could use quite a few. I know Toronto has made some moves. Hamilton has made very interesting moves. They didn't just lose players; they brought players in. Just like I said about you know Matthew Schultz, they brought in. That was a really good move, and it was an interesting, with Dominic Davis going from Ottawa to Montreal, and then you have Mazzoli going to Ottawa. So, you know, they're all the experience level did change, but not that drastically. Dominique Davis has a lot of experience in the Canadian Football League. This isn't a guy that just is in his first year in the CFL. Matthew Schultz, it's not his first year in the CFL. He's one of the groomed quarterbacks that's truly on the cusp of greatness. I keep talking about, hopefully this will be the year where some young quarterbacks move forward into a starring role, not just a, okay, he's good for a couple of games, the mayor type thing, that we saw in Calgary, where basically he was just, holding the clipboard for a while until, Bo Levi comes back. I'm hoping to see some of that, especially like if it's O'Connor, right? In Calgary, he's still there, right?
Actually, that was a good question. I was about to see if he
Yeah.
was.
Is he still in Calgary, or did he get let go? Is he free?
I have to find this. I'll
Because
look.
we've got a really good Canadian quarterback in BC that looks really good, is a great learner. His coaching staff is very happy with him, but they are looking for somebody. I'm not sure they're looking for a guy like Harris. For Harris to be there, David, I really think that Harris is going to take a haircut to go to BC. If he's going to go there, it isn't going to be for the 500 grand that we all know that he's worth based on his history.
So I will say Michael O'Connor is a free agent. So he has.
Okay.
So if I'm Michael O'Connor,
Where does he
Calgary,
go?
Calgary's not where I want to go. Hey, Edmonton, I would say why not? Maybe
Franklin is still in Edmonton, right?
No, he's not there anymore. He's
Not
gone.
there anymore?
So I think right now in Edmonton, I think they still have Taylor Cornelius. So I think Prukop's still there too. Like I think they're gonna run it back with the same quarterbacks there, um, unless they feel that they can improve with the Trevor Harris. Maybe like if I'm Michael O'Connor, maybe you see if Toronto has space. They might be a team, or Ottawa, because Ottawa, I don't know who the backup in Ottawa is going to be right now. Is it going to be Caleb Evans? Is Duck Hodges? Is that going to be in? Do they want to try that experiment again? I don't know. Um, so
This is going to
that,
be
that,
interesting.
that's where yeah, like if I'm a quarterback right now, look for the team that maybe isn't going to give you the starting job, but is going to put you in the position to say, you know what, we'll groom you. We'll make sure you're given that opportunity when the time comes.
It goes without saying, we talked about it a little bit, and when the draft comes with the Canadian players, we talk about quarterbacks, but we've learned over the past few years that quarterbacks are only as good as their offensive line. And there's a few teams that really need some work on that. Ottawa is working on that issue. BC looked like they solved the problem year before, but we're seeing also offensive linemen change hands
Yeah. Oh,
and
that
retire.
yeah, and you know what? It's funny because Derek Dennis has been commenting on a lot of the moves, and that's where I kind like Derek Dennis, a CFL lineman, knows what it takes to be good in the league. So I'm like curious to see. He's been really high on the Red Blacks moves, so especially with the offensive lineman they're bringing in, they're doing it the right way. And I mean, if you're in the East, you're like, like that was a team that had a good defense and just was so inept on offense that you're just like, if they can just improve slightly, improve on offense, they're a team that you have to be careful of. And guess what? They're doing exactly that.
This is not the Ottawa Red Blacks of the previous management. It's night
No.
and day. It's not, you know, we look, let's be clear. It did not look like Ottawa wanted to correct some problems. No offense to the previous management, but there was, I don't know. I guess just it didn't seem like there were answers being put out there. What we're learning with Sean Burke is he's not afraid to give answers, and he'll even invent his own questions to give answers to. And he has done a masterful job of, if I were a player in Ottawa, if I were a fan in Ottawa, I'd be pretty happy with what he's doing. This sounds like all we're doing is giving Sean Burke, all the props. But he's the offensive line thing. That's why we slipped into this. Is that he understands what it takes to have a winner on offense. He knows what they need, and he'll go get guys that are on other teams that he thinks, he doesn't look like the kind of guy that's worried about training guys in a position. He's ready for the ready-made guys. He'll have to stop once he runs out of money, but it doesn't mean he's going to stop before he doesn't run out of money. And I like what he's doing. If I'm an Ottawa fan, I'm really happy with what he's doing. I mean, he's selling season tickets all on his own.
Yeah, no, I mean, if you're a Red Blacks fan and you're disappointed with how the last few years have gone, this is signs that the team isn't just going to stand pat and say this. They recognize that this is a fan base that's went through quite an up and down, right? And the last 2 years have been so bad, and that you're like, oh, like and it's hard to preach patience there because it was just not going so well too.
But there's another reason for that, David. They didn't have any reason to be patient. They
No,
had an expansion team that went to the Grey Cup.
this
They
is
had
true.
an expansion team the next year that won the Grey Cup. So they're one fan base that when the GM says we want to win now, he knows these fans know it's possible. It's a reality. It's something that can happen. You don't need to. tell people, well, this is a long 3-year project. And in the CFL, 3 years is long. 2 years is reasonable. 1 year is an expectation in the Canadian Football League. The Argos did it last year. They went from, to last to first. We've seen teams do it. In the West, we don't see it as much because in the West, it's so competitive. To go from the bottom to the top, you got to go through 3 teams. It's not that easy. If you're Edmonton, you got to go through Calgary, Saskatchewan, and Winnipeg. I mean, and no offense to the Eastern Division, especially considering last year. The Eastern Division was a whole different division last year. After all the years that they had a legitimate 3 teams in the playoffs that deserved to be there, that were as good as the teams in the West. And if
Yeah.
not, by a hair.
Well, and how many times would we say that the West was dominating teams in the East, and you're just like almost ready to hand the Grey Cup to the team in the West? Now, not so much. I think the what it is too is the talent is dispersing. There isn't a team collecting all the best Canadians, all the best play. And I think it also comes down to the quarterback play too.
I
Quarterback
think it's
play is
management too, David. It's management as well. And
yeah.
and Ottawa's gonna add to that theory that I believe it's management. Pinball Clemens coming to Toronto. Hamilton having the great management team that they've had over the years that has created winners back to back to back to back, not championships, but that. Montreal getting a new owner, a team that looks to be competitive every year. Ottawa's joining that group.
I think so. And the funny thing is like there's only 3 playoff spots. Like
That's
that,
right.
that's what's going to make it interesting is that,
No more backing in.
yeah, a
No
team.
more first with what is it, 9-9 record or 8-10.
No, and I think maybe the East might be stronger than the West in terms of depth of all top to bottom.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's
Beyond the top
exactly what I'm
3.
saying. They're going to have 4 teams that are going to be competing for all the playoff spots. Will the West have 5 teams that are competing for all the playoff spots? Is the question. Edmonton and BC have as much to prove as the other 3 have proven. That's what they got to go through. It's just going to be tough for them. But as I said, I hold to my statement. You can make a big difference in 1 year. I'm just not seeing it right now in Edmonton and BC. I'm seeing them move a little slower than I'd like if I was one of their fans.
Well, and maybe you're saying, look, Winnipeg is keeping their team together again. Calgary seemed to have refound. They found themselves after we thought maybe they were going to be taking that turn down. So maybe BC is just saying we're going to take things slowly because we think it's not going to be long until we can take over because that what Winnipeg's doing can't be sustained forever because there are guys that will be moving on. So I think maybe some are taking the long game instead of just the quick fix.
Yeah, and that's to be expected in the Canadian Football League, that there are going to be different ways of trying to achieve winning. It's not easy. What they do in the Canadian Football League is their job is to entertain us, and hopefully the crutch that they've carried, David, which is the pandemic and the inability to practice and prepare for a season um, in a way that's reasonable, because the way they've been preparing for seasons the past couple of years and no season has been a real detriment to their bottom line. And for me, the bottom line is entertainment, which affects the other bottom line.
No, definitely for sure.
Yeah, so it should be interesting. Next week will be interesting because we'll start getting the rest of those free agents coming free. Thanks, David, for doing this.
Thank you again, Frank.
Okay, I'm Candid Frank Stanisci of CFL Talk. Welcome to the Spanglish World Network on Zingo TV channel 250. Please remember to download the Zingo TV app. Make that. Thank you for watching. Airing Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. This show can also be heard on the Spanglish World Radio Network. For CFL Talk, news, entertainment, and other sports programming we offer, please check out spanglishworld.ca. Spanglish World. Watch it, hear it, read it, download it, and live it. Thanks, everybody.